More details on John McCain, the terrorist's friend, cavorting with a Caliph, with a kidnapper, and a cannibal. The big three, Caliph, kidnapper, and cannibal in Idlib, Syria. This gives C cubed, or just about, C or K, but call it C cubed. Not command, control, and communication, but a caliph, a kidnapper, and a cannibal. I suppose we can get by on fudging the spelling. It's like poetic license, okay? That's where he was. That's number one. We want to add in his little friends, guys like Congressman Lamborn of Colorado, who is urging mass desertions, mass insubordination, and mutiny in the U.S. Armed Forces at a time of war in Afghanistan, the threat of war always in the Middle East with ISIS and these killers, public health emergencies, and so forth. But the despicable anti-state anarchists, these Republicans, I guess we can call them. That's a curse word in its own right. Lamborn and company, and he says some of us are attempting to foment the collapse of the U.S. Armed Forces. On the whole, not a good thing, right? Would help lawless elements. I guess that's who they represent these days. And William Crystal going on one of the Sunday blabs, I think it was Face the Nation, whichever one it was, last Sunday, giving the phone number of the Weekly Standard and inviting disgruntled intelligence community types to call in. Oh my God, are we back to Valerie Plame? Are we back to massive leaking? You can see Crystal doesn't give a damn. He was a hypocrite, right? Saying, oh, Snowden's the end of the world. And then he turns around and says, oh, now we've got to have leaks to discredit Obama. This is all about as fake as Bell Hodges' charm offensive, his friendship tour around the world. Remember Bell Hodge? We were on his case already in the spring of 2011. He's going around. Maybe he'll meet McCain. I can't imagine that he wouldn't, and I'm quite serious. And then we've got the Secret Service question, and I hope we'll have time today to go through a kind of a summary, which I think represents the current state of our knowledge about what's been going on with the Secret Service, in particular from 2008, 2009 to the present time, but just some other notes to fill that in. So let's start with McCain. Now, as people know, that we're dealing essentially with two kinds of photographs, right? There's a photograph of McCain in Idlib, Syria, April 2013, where he's sitting down with a group of people. And the one guy in the room that anybody who's been looking at these things can recognize is General Salim Idris, who was the head of the Free Syrian Army until he fled to Doha, and his number two fled to Stockholm as the Free Syrian Army essentially ceased to exist back in about December of last year, right, when their weapons warehouses were taken over by the Nusra, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever it is. And then we have the outdoor pictures, right, where they're coming out of the meeting, apparently standing in front of a doorway, and you see McCain sort of mugging for the camera with a group of these people. Now, I had spent some time trying to figure out who these people actually were. And the first problem that you face with these people is not quite as bad as a British. The British always have, if you're a British oligarch, you have three names. But in this case, they have two. They have their normal name, and then they have their nom de guerre. So this is where we have to begin looking. Now, let's just bring ourselves up to date. In the indoor picture, you see McCain with General Idris, and you also Caliph. You see this guy, Ibrahim Badri, alias Baghdadi, Al-Qaeda, $10 million reward or something up to $10 million reward. And then, of course, the head of ISIS at the time, and now Caliph Ibrahim, the head of the Caliphate with his Rolex watch. So, you also see some other guys, right? Now, some of these, we're working on trying to identify those people. Now, in the outside picture, we see McCain in the center. On the right-hand side, we see a guy called Muaz Mustafa, who is something approaching a lobbyist, I would think. He's in the right foreground. But you've also got Mohammed Noor and the Caliph, right? So Mohammed Noor is out there in front. And this is, I think, this is going to be interesting. But the guy that is most interesting at this point, and I would send you to a very interesting website here. This is now called Countercurrent News. Countercurrent News, September 30th. John McCain accidentally admits he met with ISIS members. Well, that's not the news. That's the old Fox News. But what we're being told now is what I had been working on earlier in the week. In the pictures that were taken of McCain with these people, to the far left of the promo picture, then distributed by ISIS-linked rebels, by these crazies, we see a guy called Khalid al-Hamad. So it's KHALIDAL-HAMAD. Now, sometimes you're going to see Hamad, H-A-M-A-D, sometimes H-A-M-I-D. There are other variations. I've told you before, transliteration of Arabic into the Roman alphabet, any language, very tough to handle, right? But this guy standing at the extreme left with McCain out in front. It's actually funny. This is the cannibal. The cannibal. This is the guy, as the head of one of these brigades, supposedly of moderate terrorists. He's the guy who killed a Syrian soldier, cut him open, ripped out heart and a piece of lung, and bit into that and chowed down for the cameras. The cannibal. Yes, indeed. McCain met with the cannibal. Now, the problem with identifying this, as I experienced it, is this guy has two names. He's Khalid al-Hamad, H-A-M-A-D, H-A-M-I-D, and he's also Abu Sakkar, A-B-U-S-A-K-K-A-R. And you'll see variations on that, too. You got to expect the vowels are going to kind of vary, okay? So you got to use other spelling variations. Getting into this, you see the problem of keeping a database of these terrorists because of the spelling, right? How are you going to do it? But anyway, there he is. Now, this is funny. McCain is in the center of a group of 5 people in one photograph. All the way on the left, the cannibal. And once again, Abu Sakkar, Khalid al-Hamad. Between McCain and the cannibal is the Caliph. That's Badri, Baghdadi, Caliph Ibrahim. Oh my God, and there's more. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. It's the 3rd of October. Now let me call your attention to some recent broadcast activity. Naturally, you want to check in at Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net, Tarpley.net. You would find there my Rents interview this week. Jeff Rents and I talking about this question of the Secret Service. I was beginning to assemble this catalog of incidents that I hope to go through with you today. And the other thing you'll find there is what I'm going to do tomorrow. That is tomorrow from the point of view of this program. On the 5th of October, Sunday, the 5th of October, 4 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on KDKA Pittsburgh with my friend Chris Moore. This, of course, the oldest broadcast station in the U.S., a boomer, goes all over the Middle West, 50,000 watts. So that will be highly interesting, and a lot of it will revolve, I'm sure, around these topics. So please do tune into that. Look at Tarpley.net. There are rumblings that the insistent rumblings that Romney is preparing to run again. Get a hold of that book, Just Too Weird, Bishop Romney and the Mormon Takeover of the United States with Polygamy, Theocracy, and Subversion. But now back to our dear friend McCain. So we've established that in that wonderful afternoon of Idlib, Syria, April of 2013, we have McCain sitting down with the cannibal, and once again, we want to make sure that we don't forget the cannibal, Khalid al-Hamad, alias Abu Sakar. You can find all kinds of interviews with these people. You'll even find correspondents saying he really doesn't seem that extreme at all. He's not extreme. He's just a cannibal. And of course, what arises here. Did McCain go to lunch with the cannibal? Did the cannibal say, why don't you come over for lunch? We're having, God, don't let me go into this line. But what we do find, of course, is that this guy is on tape. He cuts out and eats the heart and some lung of a Shiite victim of ISIS, according to one account. There's some debate about exactly who he had killed, but people have seen it. So that guy is a cannibal, whether he calls himself Free Syrian Army, Storm Brigade, Nusra, Islamic Front, ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever he calls himself. He's a cannibal, and that's really all we need to know. So now we have a U.S. senator cavorting with a cannibal and the Caliph, because, of course, the cannibal, kills a few, right, according to his needs for food, I guess. But the Caliph, of course, Bakri Baghdadi, Caliph Ibrahim. Between McCain and the cannibal, we have the Caliph, and then we have another guy standing in the door. He's just a kidnapper. There were two people at this meeting, according to our research, two people who were involved in kidnapping 10 Shiite religious pilgrims that they accused of being from the Revolutionary Guard of Iran. And when it became clear that McCain had met with those people, he was threatened with lawsuits. He was threatened with lawsuits from relatives of the people who had been kidnapped, and he was consorting with the kidnappers. So he had distanced himself from that pronto. One of the things they'll tell you, of course, on this is it's all covered by the speech and debate clause. It is not. The speech and debate clause does not make you above the law. Sorry, John McCain. And the other question is for little Rand Paul. If he's still on this issue, right? He was on this issue 2 weeks ago, but with him, of course, we can't tell. So here's what I recommend. You're going to sit down in the Republican caucus with a cannibal, with a caliph and a kidnapper, the friend of all those. Is that what you're going to do? There are two remedies that any senator can put in, right? You don't need the Department of Justice. You'll remember that Senator Joe McCarthy, the red-baiting bigot, when he overdid it and started attacking the U.S. Army, he was censured. The Senate voted to censure him. It basically says the Senate gets together and condemns the behavior of one of its own members. Good. Do that for McCain. And since, of course, this is much more serious, right, because this is now not just destroying careers and lives, it's killing people with the caliph and the cannibal and indeed the kidnapper, because who knows the relation of the kidnapper to these Foley and so, right? We have these reports that the Free Syrian Army, so-called, sold the two beheading victims, we assume, to the ISIS killers, right? So you have all that. So this is much worse. So McCain should not just be censured, he should be censured first and then expelled. The Senate can expel a member. That's number one. We want to add in his little friends, guys like Congressman Lamborn of Colorado, who is urging mass desertions, mass insubordination, and mutiny in the U.S. Armed Forces at a time this gives C cubed, or just about, C or K, but call it C cubed, not command, control, and communication, but a Caliph, a Kidnapper, and a Cannibal. I suppose we can get by on fudging the spelling. It's like poetic license, okay? That's where he was. More details on John McCain, the terrorist's friend, cavorting with a Caliph, with a Kidnapper, and a Cannibal. The big three, Caliph, Kidnapper, and Cannibal in Idlib, Syria. Of war in Afghanistan, the threat of war always in the Middle East with ISIS and these killers, public health emergencies, and so forth. But the despicable anti-state anarchists, these Republicans, I guess we can call them. That's a curse word in its own right. Lamborn and company, and he says some of us are attempting to foment the collapse of the U.S. Armed Forces. On the whole, not a good thing, right? Would help lawless elements. I guess that's who they represent these days. And William Christie